Sizzling hot topic here for Monday, January 27th. Can you believe it? Less than a month till MLS opening weekend in February 22nd. And offseason has been busy. The internet has been going wild. Transfers in, transfers out. What tops the list for the MLS transaction update for you, Mr. Davis?
Well, okay, I guess the visual aids here. I'd like to bring visual aids to the show since we are here on YouTube. This is from Transfer Market. Just these are the official moves that I picked out that are done that I think are worth mentioning. And again, so things are moving so quickly, and this is such a busy offseason that there's some sort of there are a lot of fundamental changes happening at clubs. You know, in terms of the makeup of their teams, starting lineups even. Federico Navarro leaves Chicago. This is just part of the Chicago Fire overhaul that is happening right now under Greg Berhalter. We have seen, those rumors of kicking the tires on a Neymar deal. Not going to happen. Looks like he's going back to Santos in Brazil, and you didn't want him anyway. And I do think, it's interesting that we had a report about Mansueto and Berhalter flying to Saudi Arabia to have conversations with Neymar's people. Robert?
I just got to say, what's their depth chart for gets? Like, it's Neymar and then a guy from like the third division in Lithuania. Like, what's the second option behind Neymar there?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, again, you follow your local independent media outlet, journalistic outlet that's covering MLS. Check out the podcast. Those people have a very clear idea of what the depth charts look like right now. And, for Chicago, again, this is a rebuild of a rebuild in a sense that I don't even know if it's the right word. Rebuild implies that you had something good to begin with. And then it was like, it kind of didn't do very well. And then you had to rebuild it, or it got old and they were never good to begin with. Like, it's been so long since the Fire mattered that you're not really rebuilding. You're going from scratch at this point, right? So, I mean, look, we just saw Brian Gutierrez in the U.S. men's national team camp. He's a player I think a lot of Chicago fans are hoping to see a big season from. They still have Hugo Kuipers up top, I believe, to score their goals. Kellen Acosta in the midfield. We'll see. Navarro goes out, right? There is Jack Elliott joined from Philadelphia, so they added him in the defense. He said he wants to be part of that project, I think is the word that he used. So there's some
always trouble when you say project.
But that's always a word that kind of should ring a warning bell, just because it does feel like, well,
it may or may not work, but we're going to give it a try.
Right. You've got Jonathan Bamba, who has joined Chicago this season from I believe he was playing in France. He was playing in Celta Vigo, so he arrives from Celta Vigo to join the Fire. Had played in Liga for a number of years. 28-year-old winger, so they're going to add him and hope he is a significant addition on the attack. So that's Chicago. Again, Navarro's out. That's just clearing some room. Elijah Winder is on this list. That's an interesting one, and one I know Nicholas Murray in our chat is intrigued by, because he goes from Louisville City of the USL Championship to the LA Galaxy for 380,000 euros. The transfer market uses euros, but obviously it's basically one for one. I've seen it argued that's paying too much for him, but I think he's 21 years old. His brother, by the way, is in Europe already. So, this is obviously a talented family. Joshua Winder has already made the jump to Europe. I think the Galaxy are being smart, trying to get in on a young player that they see some potential in. Carlos Gruezo leaves San Jose. This is, again, part of Bruce Arena's project there in San Jose. And the San Jose Earthquakes, Rob, have you been paying attention to what Bruce has been doing? What he's been up to over there in San Jose, trying to make the Quakes matter again?
Yeah, I've seen. There's definitely been some incomings there. They got the late stage Mr. Martinez, Joseph Martinez in there, and there's been a couple, somewhat notable, project type acquisitions for San Jose. And going just back to the Fire for a second, I think it's kind of amusing that Andrew Gutman came in from Colorado, who was like a U23 player that fans wanted them to sign like 8 years ago, and he's now meandered his way back to the Fire after being he could have been like a homegrown signing for them. So I thought that was just kind of gave me a comical smirk that they eventually, that's the rebuild. They got the guy from their own academy 8 years later. That's part of the rebuild there in Chicago.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so you wanted to mention Chicago. I want to go back to San Jose in a second, but I will also point out, as Nicholas Murray is giving us facts as he is wont to do, and he does a great job with it. Elijah Winder, is the third USL Championship Young Player of the Year in the past 4 years to be transferred to Europe or MLS. I've already mentioned Josh Winder, his brother, who's at Benfica now. I should say what I like about that move, too, is that the pipeline between USL and MLS has not been good enough. MLS hasn't done a good enough job identifying talent out of the USL Championship and bringing them up. And it's always good when American teams are paying other American teams for their players. Right, this is a market that has to open up, and so cash flowing from the LA Galaxy to Louisville City is a good sign for the future of that pipeline. So Grezzo, who was a DP at one point, he's gone. I think he was here, he left and went to Germany, came back, San Jose, now he's gone. Mateusz Bogus going to Cruz Azul for something like $9 million is a pretty interesting deal too.
Yeah, that's a low-key big one, I think.
Yeah, I loved Bogus as a player. Now, LAFC has shown a propensity for being able to find players like this, like Bogusz, whether they're South American or European. So this is an interesting one. It's an out, but LAFC, I think, is in a good place to replace him. So Emerson Rodriguez getting sold to Ludogorets. Miami making some room and bringing some more money in. Patrick Weah going from Minnesota to Atlanta United 2. That's only interesting. The only reason I included this is because I think there was this thought a while back. Patrick Weah was related to Timothy Weah, but I don't think there is any relation there. I think that was all kind of like he didn't deny it, and somebody took it as possible. But anyway, he hasn't done a lot yet. He's 21. He's still got some growth, but there. Dante Vanzeir. That's a player who had some decent moments in MLS. Obviously, some highly controversial moments in MLS. That opens up a DP slot, if I'm not mistaken, with the New York Red Bulls, and they have been already sort of fascinating this season. They signed Choupo-Moting.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
What do you make of that? Because that's not an obvious sort of back end of his career guy I would think a team would be interested in Major League Soccer.
No, because he's kind of been a mercurial character anyway. He's bounced around. He was at the Stokes and a few different other continental places, and then kind of was the fill-in-the-blank forward for them when Bayern Munich was in transition. Popped up in spots and then kind of got replaced by Kane. And then of all the players, New York Red Bulls, they've been so shy. I don't know if shy are apprehensive at laying out the money for any sort of like star players, and they haven't really brought in a lot. I mean, obviously they got Forsberg last year that had mixed results, and then if you're going to lay out the money, this is not the player that we speculated. We kind of joshed a little bit about Mo Salah being that guy they should maybe splash some cash for with the Klopp and Red Bull connection. But Choupo-Moting, not the player that, is anyone going to they got Choupo-Moting? Let's go down to the Red Bull Arena and go check out a game. I haven't been there in years. I think I'll get into traffic and head on down to New Jersey for a Choupo-Moting experience to tell my kids I saw him.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know what his,
what is the appeal? What is the appeal?
Just that he scored some goals, I guess. That he was available. That he was on a free transfer, and that they hope he can score some goals.
With it being a free transfer, I guess it's taking a flyer. Maybe his experience, and he can coach up some players within the locker room. Perhaps he's very positive in the locker room. I don't know. Sure. Maybe it's like we didn't have to lay out a bunch of money. Still has a little bit of life in his legs. Maybe he can net a couple for us where we didn't.
Yeah, perhaps. All right, I got a couple more. Let's go. Karol Swiderski leaving Charlotte opens up an EP slot for them. Of course, they made the Wilfred Zaha move, and we're hoping that Patrick Agyemang gets a lot of time to score the goals that we saw with the U.S. men's national team, and he can build on his career. Swiderski had some moments in Charlotte. It was always kind of like dicey whether he was really there or not. They've had a couple of Polish players come through there. So he leaves. Alan Velasco sold by Dallas, part of their rebuild, their overhaul. I'm still kind of trying to catch up on what FC Dallas is trying to do. I like the signing of Eric Quill as their head coach, a guy who had some success in the USL Championship and has some connections to FC Dallas through his time there as a coach. But I again, in terms of their roster and what they're doing, they traded Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferreira to Seattle, as Seattle going to add some pieces with multiple fronts to fight on this year. Dallas added Anderson Julio, a 21-year-old winger or 28-year-old winger rather, who was at Real Salt Lake, who had, was a decent player at Real Salt Lake. They added a player called Show, SHOW, a player called Show. I don't know what to expect out of Show. He's a defensive midfielder who arrives from Maccabi Haifa. But yeah, I just wanted to mention the name. How can you go wrong with a name like Show?
What's his first name? Billy Show? And no. That's the funniest name since PC, or unique name since PC.
You, he's Angolan. His name is just Show. He's Angolan, and because he's Angolan, he's got a Portuguese style name. So this is kind of like that thing that the Portuguese tend to do, where they just give you one nickname and that's who you are. So it's just little Brazilian shirt name kind of vibes for Show, I think.
That's cool.
But he better be good with a name like Show. Like he better back up the name is all I'm going to say about him. All right. So you see here, Velasco goes, Nkosi Tafari leaves Dallas. Again, Dallas player leaving to go to LAFC. That's an interesting bit of depth, perhaps. I think he'll play a significant amount at LAFC. Leon Flack leaving Philadelphia. I would love to hear what Philadelphia fans think about that. Him leaving. They've had Jack Elliott left. There's been some changes. Obviously, a new head coach in Bradley Carnell. Timo Pukki, who had some nice moments in Minnesota, he leaves to go back to Finland, his native country.
I was surprised Pukki only tallied up 14 goals in total in 2 seasons. I thought he had a little bit more than that.
No, it didn't have. I think he got hurt. It just had one of some poor runs. And then Yaya Boa, who I've liked a lot in Columbus, ended up at LAFC. And here's some insight again. This is what we get from our fans. Mike Thomas, Union fan. Apparently, Flock left for personal reasons to be closer to Germany because he left Germany, but he didn't go to Germany, or he left MLS but didn't go to Germany. Anyway, Yaya Boa, I believe there was a trade involved here, rights of first refusal, because I think he was released by Columbus or he hit the waiver wire. It's one of those MLS things that's really hard to kind of. What's going on here? What's the mechanism for Yaya Boa ending up in LAFC and then at LAFC and then LAFC having to trade some assets? They sent $50,000 to San Diego in general allocation money in order to sign Yeboah because apparently San Diego picked him in the reentry draft. That's what it was. So Yeboah was reentry draft claimed by San Diego. And LAFC wanted to sign him, so they had to send $50,000 to San Diego. There's that. Over at Gimme Sport, and obviously you guys are watching. You're watching Tom Bogert and David Gass on Soccer Wise. Shout out to them. And I'm sure Tom's going through all this stuff. But I just some of the rumors and things that are flowing around right now. Cincinnati getting closer to a couple signings, according to Tom. They've got Lucas Engel, wingback from Middlesbrough. We know how they love their wingbacks in Cincinnati. Vancouver signing Jaden Nelson, who had from Rosenborg. He had been with Toronto, and I remember him having some nice moments with Toronto. So coming back to MLS, but joining Vancouver this time around. There you go, Timbers, who I think have been pretty quiet this offseason. They might be bringing in a left back. Chicago signed, again, part of the Chicago rebuild here. Midfielder Romanique Kouami from Cadiz. So there's that. Minnesota, too, as well. So the off-season has been very, very busy in Major League Soccer, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. So I'm fascinated to see how this season, because this looks to me like MLS flexing some international muscle as a destination. Maybe not for the top-level players, obviously, but for a different tier of players than they've had in the past.
Yeah, it seems wild just looking at that huge list of the incoming, outgoing that, 10, 15 years ago, MLS didn't even interact with the world. It was an isolationist league. And to see, you could scroll and scroll and scroll through these off-season transfers. Dallas emptying the cupboard, a couple interesting players coming into San Jose, Charlotte, and others. Definitely interesting developments. We'll see what happens in MLS 2025, only 3 weeks away from kickoff for the brand new Major League Soccer season. If you haven't already, give us a follow, a subscribe, the Morning Kick Around YouTube channel. We're on the march to 1,000 subscribers, so why don't you be the next? Help us support, become the town center for the American soccer conversation, and do that and follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and chip in financially if you'd like to. Buy us a coffee or a monthly donation. Do that at Ko-Fi.